Thanks for joining us today, Junkies. I'm Brandon Dukeman here with Will Harvey, and we are your hosts of the Wealth Junkies Show. Today, we've got a pretty exciting guest in store for you today. So make sure
You
you pay
messed up
attention.
the intro
because I had a lot of things going through our mind. But make sure you pay attention to
keep
this
the streak
episode.
alive.
Yeah, pay attention to this episode here. This is we've got a nice business lawyer and entrepreneur to himself. So pay attention to this episode. There's some good stuff coming out.
Yeah,
of it. So
it'll keep you out of jail.
I'll let Will hopefully not screw his intro up.
Thank you, Brandon. So today on the show, we have Devin Miller. Devin is the managing partner and CEO of Miller IP Law. He's also founded several multi-million-dollar startups and loves to help other startups and small businesses. So really excited to talk. Devin, thank you for coming on our show. Can you just give the listeners a little bit more about your background and how you got to where you are today?
Sure. That's probably a very long and sordid tale, but I'll try and keep it reasonably short. So I kind of educational-wise, I started out BYU, Brigham Young University out in Provo, Utah, and got an electrical engineering degree as well as a Mandarin Chinese degree. And then from there, I went to Case Western Reserve, where I did a joint degree, an MBA degree, so a Master's of Business Administration, as well as a law degree. And with that, I focused kind of both on the business side as well as the legal side, mostly on intellectual property, so patents and trademarks. Then, as you mentioned, I've done a couple multiple startups, but a couple ones that have turned into multi-million-dollar startups. The first one was actually started while I was in law school and MBA school. So I was doing those dual degrees, and then there was a business competition that they were kind of getting different degrees or different people studying different things, and they would bring it together in a group, and everybody would work together and pull the different strengths. And so probably the first startup I did was started with that competition, and it was with a wearable device. So this was back in about 2013. Kind of before iWatch and wearables and everything kind of come out,
right.
But we're looking at doing wearables for hydration monitoring. So for athletes and for other weekend warriors and people that are looking to up their performance to be able to monitor their hydration. So that was kind of one of the first startups I did while I was in school. And then I bought out my partners and continued on. And that one's still going today. So I kind of play a role in that, and then continue to be one of the founders of that company. And then a lot of my mainstay or my main focus is on the law practice that you mentioned that I started, Miller IP Law, and as I've gone through both on the legal side and understanding patents and trademarks and protecting things, as well as on doing startups myself, kind of wanted to start a law firm and a law practice of helping startups and small businesses understand the different intricacies of how you protect and grow a business.
Got it. Wow, that's pretty impressive. That's pretty impressive.
So I want to make sure I heard it right. So you initially went to college as an electrical engineer in Mandarin language studies. Is that what you said? Yeah.
So I ended up getting 4 degrees. So I got bachelor's in electrical engineering.
It's 4 more than I have.
It's all how you get education from all sorts. So I probably went a little overboard. But yeah, I ended up getting 4 degrees. So electrical engineering, Chinese, MBA, and a law degree.
So what made you decide to pursue law and business degrees?
Yeah, a few things. I always kind of had a desire, wanted to be involved with startups and businesses, and had that kind of bent. And I also had an uncle that was in intellectual property. He was in-house counsel for some larger companies that had done intellectual property patents and trademarks for them. So kind of as I was getting towards the end of undergraduate and looking at electrical engineering and still enjoying that, but wanting to do a bit more on the business side as opposed to the engineering side, decided to go to do the law degree and the MBA degree, get kind of the both sides of the coin as far as how you can do the business and run it and start it up, as well as how you can protect and grow it. So kind of all of that mixed together kind of morphed into what I wanted to do and where I've taken my career and my life till this point.
Yeah, that's great. So when you, after you got those degrees, that's when you started that's when you kicked off that startup that you were talking about with the wearable tech?
That was you did a competition, right? And wow.
Right. So it was this, yeah. So I was in MBA school and law school. So I was doing those in parallel, started it and then further kicked it into gear after I graduated and continued to put a lot of time and effort into it.
So, okay, very cool. What was your role in that company? Like, what did you provide when you first started up, and how many other partners did you have initially?
Yeah, initially versus where it's at today, partners and people have changed. When we started out, there was 4 of us. One quickly dropped out and didn't kind of have the time and desire to keep moving on. So it was really 3 of us. One was kind of more in the design and look and feel, and he was in the design school there. So he kind of took on that approach. The other was more on kind of materials and kind of what some of the manufacturability, and the rest of it was kind of left up to me. So I did a lot of the initial testing, design, circuit, or everything from the circuits to sensors to testing it to taking data to doing analytics. Kind of fell a lot on my shoulders. And then once I graduated and knew I was that was out in Cleveland, Ohio, when I did school out in Case Western. Wanted to move back to Utah. So with that in mind, I bought out those couple partners, brought on my father, which is had an engineering firm that he was doing, as well as a couple other individuals or investors, and brought them on so that we kind of had a fuller team, or a team with further experience to help on the engineering development as well as the finance side.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, Brandon.
What was the most difficult process for you guys, starting this business essentially? And what was, obviously it's a competition. So was there kind of a budget for it, for the startup that they gave you, or what?
Yeah. So I think it's been a few years ago now, so I'd have to think it was like a $3,000 or $5,000 budget. Mm-hmm. So a few $1,000s that you could get parts and pieces of miscellaneous. And we also filed I was in law school as well. So that was the first patent application I filed for myself. Since then, I think I'm up to 30 or 40 that I filed on my own for my businesses outside of other businesses that I help out. But those were, money is always a stressor, always a concern, but really in the business competition and getting it going, it's probably coming up with the idea that we thought we could implement that would actually work and it would actually have legs behind it. So we went through a whole bunch of different ideas, everything from a new way to do packaging material to, gym bag that didn't smell as much. And this one was really, it was at the time I was doing, and I still do quite a bit of running and longer runs or marathons. And so that's kind of, as we were doing that, and I was walking home from the school one day and kind of thinking it'd be nice to be able to see if you're hydrated or how you're managing hydration as you're running and doing marathons and that. So that was kind of, the idea it took a little more time to come up with, and then really beyond that was a lot of implementation, a lot of, great, now how do we make this idea a reality? So those are, I guess, probably the 2 things that were the biggest time and effort to get it going initially.
Got it. So you were focused on kind of the innovation types of businesses versus starting a cleaning company or something like that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I always liked the engineering background. I always liked technology and how you can make, creating new things or things that aren't out in the market. So that's typically where I've tended to put the focus.
So what would you say to somebody that has an idea or is thinking about doing something like that? What would you tell that person? Let's say that they don't have millions and millions of dollars behind them. What would you do if you were in their shoes?
That's a good question. I mean, I would probably, first thing is, it sounds trivial, but I'd probably do a Google search to see if somebody else has already come up with it and test it out. I work with a lot of startups on the law side, a lot of startups and small businesses that they'll come in and they'll have a great idea and I'll say, well, have you done any research or looked at it at all? And they'll say, well, no, but I haven't seen it out in the marketplace. And then you take 5 or 10 minutes and you look it up, and somebody's already done it and they're successful, or it's been started and failed or whatever. So I think that if I were to look and say, the first thing would be is just to do your research and to see what is actually out there and what's been done. if you get to that point, you feel comfortable that at least, based on that initial research that nobody's done, then I think probably the biggest thing that oftentimes people overlook is to get a plan, a business plan. And I'm not saying do a long written out business plan of all the things that they teach in MBA school or that you see online, but rather just, okay, this is how, in a real fashion, I'm going to get this business up and running. This is who I think my customers are and how much I can sell it. This is why I think I'm different. Kind of get that plan in place is one that oftentimes is entrepreneurs, or at least for me, myself, and others, you'll look and you'll get excited about an idea and you'll want to get it going right away and you'll want to just, let's get in and build it. And yet you never really test out the marketplace or figure out if it's people want to buy it and if you can make money out of it.
Right. It's something that where it sounds like a good idea in your head. It might appeal to you, but you don't know if the masses are gonna take it like you would. So yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, and the other, I always look at, when I wake up in the morning, I have 10 great ideas, and by the afternoon lunch, I have another 10 great ideas. And most of those, if I circle back, they're not as good of ideas as I originally thought. Right. So my rule has always been that I'll put it, if I have a great idea, I'll write it down, I'll put it on a sticky note, and I'll come back to it in a week. And if it's still a good idea, then I'll go look at it further. If in a week's time I'm not excited about it or doesn't look to be a great idea, I tend to weed them out that way.
That's a good system for weeding out all those 3 a.m. ideas that we have.
Exactly.
Yeah. So what would you say? So obviously there's ideas out there that people, like Uber and Lyft, obviously those are very similar ideas, but let's say someone comes to you, the idea is similar, but they have that, hey, I can make this better. Or what would you suggest to them with someone that comes to you and they say, yeah, I did the research, it's here, but this?
Yeah, I mean, that almost, I could take that two ways. One is the patent attorney or legal question of how you decide whether or not it's patentable or whether somebody's already blocked you out. And then there's just the general business question of what we should do. So maybe I'll start with the business question in reverse and then maybe touch on just a little bit of the legal side as well. But if I were to say, because there are a lot of things that you build on top of, right? If you were to take iPhone, which is one of the biggest, phones and everybody has them in their pockets and that, there was other phones out there before then that did a lot of the similar things. BlackBerry came out before iPhone, and you could still text on it, you could type on it, and yet iPhone came out and did it better and did it, uniquely and differently and built an ecosystem around it, added a lot more functionality. And so a lot of times very seldom do you just come out with something that is no foundation or nobody else has ever done anything in that realm. Rather, you're building on top of it or adding to it and doing it better or quicker or cheaper. So it's identifying, in the sense, what makes you unique or better than the competition. Why would customers go to you versus others? So that's kind of on the business side of, you can say, why do some people like Lyft or Uber? Maybe one is better customer service or faster or cheaper, or they have different features, or, you can do car sharing or whatever those may be. Those are the things you start to say, this is how we're unique. And then that almost translates into the legal side of, okay, now if you're saying here's how we're different and unique, that's then when patents and trademarks start to play into that. If it's a brand and you're going to build a brand that everybody loves and knows, a Coca-Cola or a Pepsi, that all their value is in their brand, then you want to go for trademarks and say, okay, now how do I build a business around a brand, as opposed to, let's say, it's something that's really on technology heavy, then you're going to say, what are my unique features? And then you go out and patent it to protect it. So I don't know, it kind of splits, or in my mind at least, how I analyze things between a couple different areas.
Yeah, that was a great response. And I like the legal aspect too of it, because not fully understanding that side of things too. So I was going to ask, what's the difference between, the trademark and the patent? And I think you kind of touched on it there. If you're building the brand, trademark it if you can. And then if you're building kind of specifics through the technology aspect, patent it.
Yeah, I always kind of, typically with intellectual property is kind of the umbrella that everything fits under. Mm-hmm. You have kind of three main areas, which are going to be patents, trademarks, and copyrights. So the easiest way to kind of delineate them is, if you're inventing something, you're creating something, that's typically falls under a patent. If you're doing more of building a brand or something with branding, then you're going to be, whether it's a logo or company name or taglines of that, then it's going to be under trademarks. And if you're doing something more creative, like writing a book or making a movie, doing music or songs, something like that, that's in their copyright. So you kind of have those three demarcations of how you split it up.
Got it. That's very useful.
So at what point in the business startup should that process be done? The legal process for somebody be done? I mean,
sure. As soon as you're able to,
yeah.
is the easy answer. Probably the more helpful answer is, where you always get into with most startups is you have more things you need, that demand your time and your money than you're able to.
Right.
And so, you can't do it all, and you wish you could do it all, and you want to do it all, but you're not able to most of the time at the starting phase, unless you're maybe making an exit off of a previous company and they're well funded and can hit all those ground running. But if I were to take the question more as startups or small businesses or people that don't have unlimited funds or large amounts of funds, I would take it as, first of all, do your research, get your strategy, and then on the legal side, you kind of got to look at it as when you're probably introducing into the market in a meaningful way. So if let's say you're introducing the world's best brand, you have a new diet cola that's going to knock all the other brands off. You're saying, when I get to the point that it's going to be hitting the market, people are going to know and pay attention and want to knock you off or mimic you. That's the time. Just that step or two before that, right before you introduce it into the market in a meaningful way, that's probably when you want to start to look at really protecting it. The patents are a little bit different in the sense that sometimes, depending on the type of business and the technology, you get into marketing, you get into manufacturing, or you get into going to venture capitalists or angel investors or those type where you haven't made it out in the market yet, but you're telling a lot of very smart people, well funded, what you're doing and how you're doing it, what your plan is. So a lot of times it's kind of, if you got to gauge your risk of, if I'm putting this out there and I assume the worst in people in the sense that they
Right.
if I tell them and it's a great idea, they'll pursue it themselves. Before you get to that stage is probably when you want to protect it on either sense.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. On that topic, venture capital, angel, all of that, have you gone that path with any of the startups that you've done? Did you raise for all of those or some of those? How did you do that?
Yeah. So, I yes and no. I did it. I wasn't the person that directly was involved with it. So
Okay.
By that point, I brought on a few other people that done it. So both on the one that I mentioned with the wearable hydration one, there's another one that's still in startup phase that we're in that very mode of doing fundraising and venture. And that was a little bit more, can't quite disclose quite as many details on it. But both of those I did venture capital on the hydration monitor. That was one where it was some pseudo personal connections or business connections that have been made with other people that were currently in the company. And we reached out to them and raised, 7 figures on that one. And then the current one that I'm involved in and the co-founder on, they've done a seed round. They're in Series A. And so, yeah, on both of those, it's some of the businesses that I've kept small and wanted to keep to myself and had a plan and ability to grow without bringing venture in. And those ones we kept it smaller and tighter. And other ones are saying the amount of money and what it will take to really bring this to market in a meaningful way requires more of the venture route or the angel route. And that's the route we've taken it.
Got it. Very cool.
So with that product stuff, obviously you're kind of testing, with kind of your inner sphere, but at what point did you decide this is ready for market?
Oh, that's a hard question. And the engineer in me always wants to probably overproduce or make it perfect. And you always want to add one more feature that's just awesome and that's going to make all the difference.
It'll never be ready if the engineer and you had the decision, right?
Exactly. It will be ready, but it will die on the vine well before I ever get it all the way to be ready. So I always look at it, and I always drives me nuts when people use minimal viable product, because that terminology is very well used in the marketplace. But I always thought it makes put out the crappiest product I can as quick as I can, and I just don't like to put out crappy products. So I looked at it as more of what can I realistically do within the time frame I have and the funding I have in order to bring out the best product I can within those restraints. And then that's what I kind of work backwards for. So if I need to have this launched in 6 months and I have this budget, what's the best product? Rather than minimally viable product, what's the best product I can put out while not running out of time or runway or money or anything else? And then I do that. And so that I kind of work backwards from what is my bandwidth and what can I bring to market within the plan we do, and then execute on that.
Got it. That makes sense.
So what types of things did you do to, once it was out on the market, how did it grow for you?
Yeah, almost every business seems to be different. Some of them, some of the startups I've been involved with are 5,000-10,000 a month businesses. They're not huge, but they're fun hobby or side businesses. And those ones we've really a lot of it we grew organically. We put out to friends, family, word of mouth, referrals. We did a lot of this groundwork of reaching out to individuals that we thought would be able to help to spread the word. Those ones we grow slower, more organically, and they're sometimes a lot more fun to kind of take that hands-on approach. Other times, for other businesses, we'll bring on people who have more of the marketing and the skills and expertise to really go and kind of blow it up. The one I'm in now is more of a B2B play or business-to-business play. And so that one is much more, we brought on people that have good connections in the industries that make sense, and then we have them reach out to their industry connections and get in with the B2B and make those. So it's almost seems like a different strategy or different approach for every company, because they all have kind of different markets or different ways to approach the market.
Right. Each one's a snowflake, right? All different. And yeah. Exactly.
They're all different, just kind of the old saying, we're all different just like everybody else.
Yeah. Right, exactly. So how did you get in? So it sounds like you started these innovation-based businesses and just done some awesome stuff with that. So how did you end up going into what I consider one of the most boring things on the planet, which is law? Why not continue just building businesses and doing all that?
Yeah, but it does take the right type of personality to enjoy law. It's certainly far from what you see on television. So what you see of all the exciting legal dramas is much more the exception than the rule. And I would agree that if you were to ask my wife, she's a nurse and then now a stay-at-home mom. She would be right there with you, thinking when I explain to her what I do on a day-to-day basis on the legal side, would think it's the most boring thing and would never want to do it. How did I make that? I always looked at it as kind of when I went into the MBA and law school and said, okay, what are the things I need to do, at least for the types of businesses I'm interested in, to be successful? And one is obviously to have experience and understanding of how to do business. And so did that both on my own with starting businesses as well as trying to get the education, and both of them played a good role into it. But I also looked at it, if I'm really going to be in businesses that I want to grow and expand, I want to be able to protect them, and I want to be able to understand how to protect them. And if it's technology, how can I patent that? If it's brands, how can I protect that and get a trademarks and those things? And so I looked at it, it was kind of out of necessity of wanting to, be able to have kind of an ability to understand and be able to manage the businesses and the types of businesses I'll be in, drove me to that. And then too, when I work with a lot of startups and small businesses, on the law side, I get to see a lot of really cool technology. So for me, that's the fun part on the intellectual property. Other types of law, I don't know that I would find nearly as interesting, but for patents and trademarks, I get to see businesses, everything from, I work with businesses that are on boat anchors and how they can automatically dislodge the boat anchors, to I've worked with Amazon and a Red Hat and Intel and see all of the cool stuff they're doing, and some of their consumer products on the Amazon that you see that they produce, I got to help patent on, all the way to I see, I've worked with, all the way to you see I've worked with, people that are launching social media platforms and how they're monetizing that. So I get to see, that's the fun part for me at the law side, is seeing a lot of different types of products, innovations and different things, and then kind of being in with them in the trenches of, okay, now how do we add value? How do we protect this? And how do we grow your business from the legal perspective?
So is that basically when how you get your clients. Somebody will come to you and basically say, okay, here's my business. This is what I do. How do I protect it? Is that typically how it works?
Well, I wish I just had a line out the door where people were just in line and I just showed them in one after the other.
I know I probably oversimplified that. I'm trying to dumb it down to my level.
Hey, it's a good level to be on. I'm right there with you. In a general sense, yeah. I mean, people will come in and we'll have, different ways, everything from referrals to people I know to connections to, we have some marketing efforts, but all of the above. And then people will kind of, as we make those initial connections, then they'll come in. I'll offer free strategy sessions. So I'll say, hey, let's sit down before you feel like you have to spend money with an attorney that, high billable hours. And it scares a lot of people off. People are saying, I know attorneys are expensive. And I don't even know if I need this or how much it's going to cost. So I'll sit down with them. They'll come in with an idea and they'll say, hey, this is my idea. What do you think? And I'll give them an honest feedback, both from business side. Here are a few things it may think of, but I've been through the trenches, and this is what I would give some thoughts to, and then dive in on the legal strategy of, hey, here's what may or may not work for you and what may or may not line up. But yeah, it's kind of that idea of when they're ready to launch and they're saying, hey, this is something I put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears in, getting ready to put in the marketplace. Now what do I do to make sure I don't have issues now when I launch it? And then we sit down and strategize.
That's great. And what's cool is that, and unique on your side of things, is that most attorneys that you go to, they've been an attorney their entire life and they've never had any experience outside of that. Whereas you've been in the trenches and you've started businesses on that side of it. So you haven't just been on the law side of things. So that's cool that's a value add that you can provide those everybody that you work with.
I certainly think so. I have the running joke that attorneys may give great legal advice and horrible business advice. So I hope I'm the exception to my own rule.
Yeah, I think you are. You just like Will said, they're mainly focused on that law because it's difficult and a long time to get that law degree, and you've got 4 of them, not 4 law degrees, but 4 different degrees.
Right.
So,
I don't want 4 law degrees. That would be miserable.
No, that would be insane.
So when people come to you with their ideas and stuff, have you ever sat with them and been like, "Hey, I want in on this. How can I fit into your business because I love this idea?"
Occasionally. So I would say most people, a lot of startups, small business come in and they're saying, well, hey, I got a great idea, and do you want to invest or do you want to do, how about I do the legal work for free? And most of the time I get in and they say, well, I don't know that I, one, have the bandwidth to help do that with every person. 2, some of them I find very interesting and I want to get involved, and others I'm saying that's a great idea. I don't have a lot of value to add beyond the legal. And I think that for the money you would spend on the legal services that we do, it wouldn't make sense to bring in. So sometimes I'm saying it doesn't, even if I would like to be in, trying to be fair to them, it wouldn't make sense. But there are a few that I've said that have come in that I found interesting and I'd want to get involved with, and then we work out a deal or work out an arrangement, and I go in as part of a founder or taking some equity or that. So I don't want to give people false hope, because then everybody hears that and great, now I can go find get free legal work and it'll be awesome.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's much more the exception to the rule. But there are some that I want to get involved with it. I can't hold back, and so I'll get involved with and work, be part of those startups.
Do some people come to you and their idea sucks?
Yeah. Usually the way I can tell is if people come to me and they say, I have a great idea. They start out with, I have a great idea, and then they tell you, because that's usually you can tell that they've had the idea, they haven't done any homework, they haven't thought it through, and they literally just have an idea. And then you're saying, okay, how is this going to work? Or let's dive into this and that. And I don't know. It's just the idea stage. So I still try and be nice. I give them encouragement, and you never know which idea is going to sometimes turn out to be the great ideas that I think are dumb. So I'll always be helpful and encouraging. But yeah, sometimes you'll get those ideas that you just say, that I don't understand how you're ever going to make any money off of it or build a business. But if you can, by all means, great for you.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, I was going to ask you, can you give us an example? But that's probably sharing too much.
Calling them out a little bit.
Right. Exactly. We don't want the person that came up with that horrible idea listening to this.
Yeah.
So.
They're sitting here.
I'll hold off on that one just because the chance that they ever hear it, I don't want them to go. So I was the one that you thought was the dumb idea.
Right. Exactly.
Thanks for letting me know. Thanks for letting everybody know about my dumb idea. So I'll hold off on that.
Yeah. So Devin, what are some of the negative consequences of not engaging an attorney for your business?
Yeah, I'll give you kind of two, one on the patent side and one on the trademark, just because those are the two. Copyrights can be important, but most businesses, most startups don't get into that till later on, so I'll kind of pull that one off.
Mm-hmm.
On patents, one of the harder things, if you're to go down the patent route and you have a new innovation and you have something you're really excited about, is you want to get it out, knee-jerk is I want to get it out, and rightly so, into the marketplace, start generating income, start getting everything in. And yeah, when I have a little bit of extra income or I get down the road, I'll revisit the patent stuff. The problem is that there's a statute or there's the law on patents is that once you introduce something to the public, you have a year from which to file on it. So if you wait longer than a year, you've basically dedicated that or put it out in the public domain that anybody can use it and anybody can use the same idea. So a lot of times sometimes you'll get businesses in, they've been out some form or fashion, they're growing or they're getting bigger, and they say, okay, we should probably look at protecting this now. It's been a year, longer than a year since they've done that, and then they come in and they're all excited, and then I have to sit down and say, well, we can't, for anything that's been longer than the year, we can't protect, and that anybody can to use, and it's in the public domain. And there are some strategies to say, now what's your generation 2 or generation 3, and let's work to protect that. But that's always a big drawback that people don't realize, that sometimes I put it out there and I can't go back and recapture it years later,
Right.
or longer than a year after there.
So is that a year from, let's say, engagement, or from a year from that patent being patented, essentially?
It's a year from, so before you do the patent, a year from whenever you put it out in the public domain. So let's say you do a presentation on it, you do a paper on it, you do a Kickstarter on it, you go out and expose it to angel investors, you go out and try and sell it. Anytime you put it out into the public, you start that, the first time you put it out in the public, you start that year time clock ticking.
So,
and then you can, within that year, you can file a patent on it. If you wait longer than the year, it becomes what would be public domain and open to anybody to use and to be able to build off of.
So I mean,
Wow.
So once you file the patent, it doesn't necessarily, it can be within that 1 year, but it could extend past that 1 year to get basically patented. Does that make sense?
Yes, I'll give you a yes with one cap. So the one other, so the simple answer is yes.
Mm-hmm.
Put out in the public, I have a year. Within that year, I can file on it. The only other thing you have to be cognizant of is the U.S., along with most countries, with a couple minor exceptions, are all what's called a first to file system. So whoever files the patent first has the presumption that they're the inventor. So while you have that year, you also have to think, okay, I'm putting this out in the public. If somebody likes the idea, starts to and try and files it first, then you can also have that drawback of somebody else filing before you because you waited too long, even within that year time frame, because somebody else thought it was a great idea, wanted to copy it, or wanted to build a business around it and filed first.
Wow.
So basically, if you think it's a really good idea, get your ass moving.
Yes. Yeah. If you're listening right now, if you got a product that you like, or get moving.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, exactly.
Get rolling.
So I'll jump to and then we jumped over. So maybe I'll shift gears for just a second. On the trademark side, this is almost somewhat of a similar one. There aren't deadlines as far as a trademark, meaning you can launch it whenever you want. The problem I typically get on trademarks is businesses will be out there for a year or 2 or 3 or whatever. They're starting to finally get a brand and they're building the brand. And they say, no, I noticed somebody else is copying my brand, or somebody else is using the same name or the same logo, or trying to confuse my clients. And then they'll go and say, well, yeah, they file on a trademark first. They now have the rights and presumptively have those rights. And now the business that started the brand is in a position where they have to almost stop using the brand, or they're very limited on how they can use their brand. So that's kind of along the similar lines of, if you're building a brand and that's where your business is around, that's where you want to protect. Otherwise, somebody else files on it first and they can come into large degree either limit or stop you from using your own brand.
Wow. That's scary, because I'm sure there's plenty of people out there that have been, working for months and years to build that brand up, and they're like, I don't need the attorney yet. I'm not big enough. And, somebody along the line can snatch their idea up and say, hey, get out of my space. That's
well,
crazy.
a lot of times it's, hey, this is just a hobby business or a mom and pops. And so it starts out slow and I just want to build a local business and then, oh, this is a real great idea. And okay, I'd like to build it bigger. I'd like to sell it bigger. And by that time, you've been into it a few years. And if you've done it in the beginning, you'd be okay. But now, as you built it slowly over a few years, then you get into that issue.
Okay. And it's
that's
basically
scary.
too late at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got it.
So once you file for a trademark or patent, what's kind of that process? What is it on the business owner's side? You know, what do they have to do or provide for you?
Yeah, so if I were to take it from kind of the business owner perspective, tackle trademarks first because that one's a little bit easier or quicker to explain. They'll basically, you know, to a large extent, a lot of the same law firms, and mine's I'd give you is a similar way. They would come to us, we'd get them set up as a client, and then they would go through kind of what the process is of the strategy, and they would fill out a form. Kind of gives the outlines of what their brand is or what the logo or the brand or the wording is they want to protect. We figure out kind of, so with each brand, they're based on types of goods or services. So you think of Pepsi or Coke, they're in the beverage area, right? So they have their trademarks cover the beverage. Theoretically, Pepsi and Coke isn't in the automobile industry. So you could go and start Pepsi automobiles and you could also get a coexisting trademark. Now, Pepsi's a little bit bigger. Everybody knows their brand. May not be the best example, but you have to establish kind of the goods or services you're going to use your brand for, and that's how you can have multiple names or similar names in different industries that all can coexist. So have you fill out that form. We identify kind of the goods or services that you'll be in. We'll prepare a draft, and then we'll send it to the trademark office for them to review. The last step of the process, it isn't directly for the business owner, but then they'll go and do an examination on the trademark and basically look and say, okay, is this their standard is it confusingly similar with a trademark that's already out there? Meaning, is a customer, if they see your mark and they see a mark that's already out there, are they going to be confused as to who is selling the goods or where they're coming from? So they'll do that examination and they'll either say, looks like you're cleared, you're good to go, and they'll allow you a trademark, or they'll come back with a rejection, and then you have an opportunity to respond. So then that's when I let the client know that you got a rejection, here's our options to respond, and then they decide, yeah, it looks like it makes sense to invest in, this is an important brand, or sometimes you'll get in to say, yeah, we filed 2 or 3 trademarks, this one's not as important to us, it's not worth fighting over, we want to focus on the other brands. So that's kind of the process on the trademark side.
Got it.
So how long does that process usually take from kind of start to finish?
Yeah, it varies. If you were to take kind of an average, you're probably at about 6 months from the time you file to the time you get a trademark. I've had some businesses that are as short as 3 months, others are 9 to 12 months. Depends a little bit on how unique their trademark is and how many other people are using it and types of goods and services. So there's a few factors that go into it, but generally about 6 months or so.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's a patient game.
Yeah.
Well, if we want to get into patents, are a lot longer process. So
right?
By comparison, trademarks are a lot quicker. So I don't know. I can touch on if you want me to kind of on this similar idea of kind of what the process is for patents and kind of give you an idea on that as well, if that'd be helpful.
Yeah, touch on that a little bit because I'm sure there's people out there listening that have some ideas that are worth patenting.
Sure. Yeah. So maybe walk you through kind of the similar thing as on patents, and it's a little bit more involved. Patents, it's going to be somewhat the same idea. We'll sit down and have a strategy session, make sure it actually makes sense to go forward. Then we'll set you up as a client. And then you have kind of a similar form that you fill out, kind of walks you through, here's the types of information we need, the different aspects of it. They'll fill that out. And then what we'll do is we'll schedule kind of, where patents are a lot more technical and involved, we'll schedule kind of a half an hour to an hour meeting where we'll go through all the details of your invention. You get to explain, here's what we're doing, here are some of the different variations or ways that we could do it. Or if I were to try and design around myself, how would I do it? And what are the other ways that I'm thinking of generation 2 and 3 in that? We'll get all of that information captured and we'll prepare a draft that they'll then review over and make sure that it looks all accurate and correct. And then we'll go ahead and file that. Once you file it, it gets put in a queue that's usually, queue for examination that usually takes about 18 months to get to the top of the queue. So the day you file it, your patent pending, you've established what you believe to be your date of invention. but then you get so you can say, as of the day you file a patent pending, and I intend to proceed to get a patent on this, but then you get to sit and wait in a queue for about 18 months. When you get to the top of the queue, so that's what I said. Trademarks to say are long, but those are short compared to the patents.
Wow.
So you get in that queue, and then they're going to kind of look at two kind of primary standards when they examine a trade or a patent. One is going to be what's called novelty, and the other one is called obviousness. So novelty is basically they'll go out and see, has anybody else already previously invented this? If they have, you're not able to patent something that's already been invented. Obviousness is, well, not one person that has invented this, but if you're to take two or more things that have been invented or already out in the marketplace, put them together, you're really not doing anything unique. You're just taking two things that are already out there and combining them in an obvious way. You're not adding anything new. So they'll kind of do that examination and go back and forth and say either yes, it looks like you cleared these standards, or no, this is why we think that this has already been invented, or it's obvious or what's already out there. And then you have an opportunity to go back and forth with the trademark or the patent office and argue as to why you're not the same as what's already out there, why it wouldn't have been obvious, or make some of those arguments. Typically, you're going to be another 3 to 6 months after you start examination before you're getting reaching towards a point of allowance. So overall, the patent process is about 24 months. I've had some that have gone as short as a year. I've had others that have gone up to like 36 months, depending on the technology, how crowded it is, how complicated it is, and all that. But that's generally, when you talk about it, you're in for a longer haul for when you go for patents.
Got it.
That's a long time.
Wow.
And I got to imagine that some of these people probably are biting their nails, waiting, just nervous.
I'm over here like,
idea.
2 years later.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
Wake
crazy.
back up. That's right.
So, well, Devin, what do you have in store for the future for you, and kind of where are things going for business for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I've got, right now I'm involved with, or fairly heavily, so 3 things I'm involved with. I've got Miller IP Law, which is, I founded that, have a couple other attorneys that I manage as well that we do patents and trademarks on. That keeps me pretty busy. I also, along with that, have an engineering firm that's called Mountain Green Engineering that I help on the product development side, help a lot of small startups and businesses do product development. And then third is I've got one startup that I'm pretty heavily involved with. It's, again, in the wearable realm, but it's more for diabetes monitoring for blood glucose that keeps it quite a bit of my time. And then if that wasn't enough, I've got one startup that will be one more startup that will be launching here in about another month to 2 months. That not quite ready to disclose what that is, but that will be rolling out in the future as well.
Do you have a wife or kids or anything, or is this is this what you do all the time?
I have a wife that I've been married to, and now I'm not gonna say how many years because I don't want to get it wrong, but I've been married to for over 10 years.
Wow!
And I have 4 kids.
No kidding, man.
9-year-old down to a 4-year-old. So that keeps me busy as well.
You're clearly finding way more hours in the day than I am. So that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, we're excited.
They come from somewhere.
Yeah. We're excited to see what that new startup's all about. So we'll be staying tuned for you next few months. But
I'm excited to launch it and provide a bit more details when the time makes sense.
Yeah, you'll have to let us know. So, but we're going to jump into our moments of truth questions. It's the same 7 questions that we ask all of our guests. First one here is, who is your success role model?
It's always a cliche one, but I'd probably put it as my dad has been a really good role model. He started an engineering firm and took a lot of the products, and he was doing a lot of the same things as when I was a kid. Saw him, and he was doing a 9-to-5 as well as wanting to do some of his own projects, and that we actually get to collaborate and work on a few of the projects in the companies I'm with. So he's been a great role model and someone that I've got to see and got to get that feedback and experience from. This has really been a great role model for me.
Good stuff. Great. I love that. What's your biggest success?
Biggest success has been probably the last 2 ventures on the product development and the engineering. for business side. If I get into family and biggest success on that, that's obviously wife and kids and seeing them grow and flourish and coming into their own. Business side, it's really been the law firm, the product development. That's been really enjoyable. It's been one where I've kept a lot more of the equity to myself and been able to manage it how I want to manage, and also really run and try and do things differently than what others have done in there. So that's been really a big success for me and exciting, and it's been an exciting journey.
Nice.
So what does a typical day for you look like? You got four startups, essentially, 4 businesses, and so
4
let's hear
kids.
this day. Yeah, 4 kids, 4 times everything.
So typical day, I usually will get up and I trade off. I'll either do cycling or I'll do go for a run. So I usually will do either about an 8 or 9 mile run in the morning, or I'll do cycling for about an hour and a half. That's how I'll start my day. And then once I get in, I'll get into work, and every day is pretty different. There are days that I get in and I say, great, this is going to be an open day where I don't have many things going and I'm going to be able to do a few projects. And then about that time, I get about 20 or 30 different emails that all are demanding my attention that I get to respond to. So some days will be that I'll on the law side. It's always how it works.
Yeah.
Some days it'll be on the law side that I'll be reviewing patents and drafting and preparing them. And then the very next day, I'll be working on product development of looking at circuitry and integrating in batteries and power management into sensors and getting all those up. And then the very next day, I'll be working on the website and doing some of the marketing. So I don't know how I would define a typical day, but I'll work about 10 or 12 hours. I'll go home, spend time with the kids, relax and enjoy time with the wife and the kids. And sometimes I'll jump back on late at night and be sending out emails at 1 o'clock in the morning, and other days I get to bed early. So nice. my typical days, I don't know if I have a typical day.
That's great. What is your favorite quote?
So my favorite quote is all it takes for, and there's a few different variations of it. All it takes for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing. So always is inspirational to me that what it takes to make a good world is for good people to get out there and do something about it.
I love that.
What are some of your hobbies?
When I have time for hobbies, most of my hobbies involve startups and
creating businesses and products.
If I do have time, I love snowmobiling. So I'm in Utah and we have great snow. And so if it's the winter time, I'll go snowmobiling. I'm also a hunter, so I like to get out in the fall and do some hunting for different animals. And then also, when I was a kid, about 15, my dad and myself restored a 67 Camaro. So I've always loved the work, and I still have it, still sitting in the garage. And so sometimes I'll get that out and working on it and tinkering on it. And then latest hobby has been I wanted to have kind of a fun family vehicle that would be memorable for the kids and the wife and everybody as they all grow up. And so I've got a VW bus that's from the 70s that has an old bench, and it has the bench folds down into a bed that you can actually sleep on it. So that's been my latest project and hobby, is to get that up and going.
That's very cool. You got the Scooby-Doo. Isn't that the Scooby-Doo mobile? Yeah.
Yeah, it looks very similar. Yeah, exactly.
That's great. What's the best business book that you read?
Oh, that one is a hard one. I'll give a couple. So I'll give the one that I'm reading now, and probably the best one I've read. So the best one I've read, I like, it's by Dave Ramsey, and it's called EntreLeader. And it kind of gives you both entrepreneurship and leadership and how you manage companies and businesses and people. Really enjoyed that, and it gives a lot of different insights. The one that I'm really enjoying right now is on the founding by Mark Randolph, which is one of the founders of Netflix. And so you always hear about Reed Hastings, but Mark is also one of those founders. And it's called That Will Never Work. And it's all about how when he exited from another company, was doing all the ideas and coming up with them, that he was pitching it to what was Reed Hastings at the time, and Reed Hastings told him that will never work. And then it's all about how they made it work. So that one has been a pretty enjoyable, interesting book as well.
That sounds interesting.
That's cool. Yeah, we were talking about this the other day, but I remember when Netflix was sent to you in the mail.
The DVDs.
You had to go online and select what DVDs and stuff. So,
it started out as they sold DVDs, and it was actually similar to Amazon, where you could go on and buy the DVDs, and they had the largest selection, and then they completely abandoned that model and went to the rental market, and then to now what they are online. So it's a pretty interesting.
It's amazing how they just shifted. We compared them to Blockbuster. Blockbuster was so big at one point, and to think that Netflix would stay alive and Blockbuster would go defunct. If you ask people that in the 90s, I'm sure they would think you're on drugs if you thought that Netflix was going to beat them. But Netflix was adaptable, and look who's still standing.
Yeah. Well, and Blockbuster, Netflix offered them to be bought out for $50 million at one point. So if Blockbuster would have just purchased them and done that, it could have been a completely different story.
Yeah.
Yeah, we might not have streaming Netflix on our TVs right now. So.
Yeah.
But last question here: if there's one key piece of advice you could leave our listeners with about achieving success, what do you think it would be?
It'd probably just is simple, but it'd be just take the time to plan. Oftentimes, I think the difference between success and failure is taking the time to actually plan. No good plan ever is. Every plan is going to, you eventually either throw it away or have to pivot and evolve. But to take the time to actually plan out what you're going to do and how you're going to do it, makes you be diligent enough to actually figure it out and see if you're serious and whether it's worth the investment. So that initial step of planning out what you think, what the business is going to be, I think is the one that oftentimes will be the difference between failure and success.
That's really great. Yeah. What's the failing to prepare is preparing to fail or something like that.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's awesome. So, well, Devin, how can our listeners get in contact with you?
Yeah, so I'll probably just give them one place they can reach out to me because I've got too many that I could stream on. Exactly. But for the email that they can easily reach at me is at Devin, so Devin and then Miller IPL, so Miller MILLER, I is in intellectual, P is in property, and L is in law .com. So that one's an easy email. I'm pretty responsive. If anybody ever needs anything, I reach out or I respond pretty quickly. They're also welcome to. I give out my personal cell phone number. They can call or text me on it. It's 801-829-8446. Or if they want to check out the website, it's just milleripl.com.
Great.
That's awesome. So you heard it from him at 3 a.m. Send him some texts and ask him those law questions. So,
exactly.
Well, our tagline is always, I work the same hours that inventors do. So if you're a night inventor or a weekend inventor, I'll be available.
That's
all right.
Well, Devin, we appreciate you being on the show today. I learned a lot, and I think we got some stuff over here that we need to take some action on, but we appreciate you being on the show today.
It was a pleasure to be on, and it was great to talk with you guys.
Yeah, awesome. And we'll see everybody tomorrow.